And hello, and welcome to a review of our episode 3 that we held, I believe it was December 8th, but I can check on that. This is also not only a little review of that, but a preview of what's likely to come up. And I like to do these after each session because we have people joining us on the Wednesday evening live streams from different. Some people are coming in from Facebook, some are coming in from YouTube, some are coming in from different locations. So I don't always see the chat, but it's great to see, and we have some new people joining our second hour, which is fantastic. So what I'm going to do is come over here to my PowerPoint. Yes, okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to, each of these review previews is I'll have like 3 or 4 very short topics that I'll cover, and it's to give those who missed the session a little idea of what we talked about, and for those who did attend, a little reminder. So we're going to just touch on the power of a 1-minute meditation and why we've been doing them at the beginning of each of the first hours. Then talk about capturing a frame, a piece of something you remember. And this is going to become very, very important as we progress both through the meditation and through the internal map of reality course. And talk about something that's really dear to me that I think is probably a core of a lot of things going on in our lives. It's something called conscious healing. So we'll touch on that. And finally, I want to talk about doing longer meditations and how we're going to approach that, and if you're interested, how to go about that. The 1-minute meditation, we've been starting those at the beginning of the first hour. And the whole idea of meditating is that the quieter that you can become, the more you can hear. So you kind of got this tube, and you can either be talking through it or listening to it. And I think it's probably pretty hard to talk and listen at the same time, although there are probably those people who think that they can. But the whole idea is that even if you just stop for 1 minute and take a breath and relax and just listen and observe, this begins what I like to call a momentum. And some of you that have been doing this 1-minute meditation might notice that it kind of stays with you. Even though we only took that 1 minute, it kind of puts a brake on everything, and I call it hitting the reset button. And in essence, what we're creating when we do this 1-minute meditation, we're creating a memory of a moment in time when you took a breath and meditated. It doesn't matter really how long this moment in time was. It just is important that you did it. And this becomes in itself a kind of internal representation of you being still and calm. So what we're doing each time we do these 1-minute meditations, we're building a history. We're building an icon. We're building a reminder of what it feels like to meditate. And again, I want to stress, it's not about how long you meditate or how deep you meditate or what you experience when it's none of that. What it's all about is that you made a conscious decision to meditate. So you took that moment, just taking that moment in itself initiates something. We'll be talking about this in greater detail in the internal map of reality. It's something called an internal strategy. And this internal strategy becomes a motivator. It's something that you can use later on. Another name I like to give these special frames, I call them power frames, and we'll be doing this in an exercise maybe in a couple of weeks, where we build some power frames, frames that you can go to, memories that you can go to that have power. So these 1 minute meditations will grow on you, and because we don't have a lot of time in our 1 hour or first hour, we'll continue doing the 1 minutes. We might go a little bit longer, but that's not what's really important. What's important is that we took the minute and that we looked at what was flowing by us. We tried to listen to ourselves. And in this quote from the anonymous person, they reference the auditory hearing, but really it's about sensing through your 5 modes of perception plus words. So we're visualizing, we're hearing, we're smelling, we're tasting, we're feeling, and we're hearing actual words. And I think we touched on the fact that it's my personal belief that when we are in nature, nature will be communicating to us through these 5 modes, not through words. Although there might be a plant in nature that can actually make words. I wouldn't deny that, telepathic plant. But I think animals and plants try to communicate to us through sounds, through touching, how a cat will stroke up against you. The purring of a cat is a sound thing that's trying to tell you something. The smells, cats and animals in nature, plants will emit sounds and colors. All of these actions have meaning. Okay, just talking about these meanings, I call it a frame, a piece of memory, a strip out of your timeline, and in there's a frame. And we'll be learning how to capture a frame and look at it. And in that frame there could be actual visual information. You could be looking at something, or you could be hearing something. You could be listening to some music, or you might be listening to someone speaking to you. And that might be a very special person in your life saying something to you. It could be smells, it could be tastes. And I'm sort of, a frame that just came to my mind right now was a frame of Christmas when I was a kid. And I can visualize now, I can see the dining room table that my mother would set up with the special tablecloth. And there was always some candles. And there was always a big, big, big platter of fresh fruit, and grapes and oranges and apples and, some exotic fruit that we wouldn't normally have. And then there'd be bowls of nuts that we could eat all day, and some treats sitting around. And then there was the smell of the turkey in the kitchen and the sounds of my brothers running around making noise. And normally there'd be some Christmas music playing. I could go into this frame more, and this is just one frame that came up to me. So we're going to practice doing that when we have some exercises where we'll think of something in the past, and what will come to you is a frame. And in that frame will most likely be all of the 5 senses and probably some words, so the 6 modes. But they're going to have submodalities. They're going to have texture. They're going to have strength. They're going to have juxtaposition. So some of the modes are going to be more prominent than others. So the point of this is that when you try to remember something, you're going to recall a frame, but typically what will happen is you will focus on your dominant mode. So if you're a visual person, you will focus on what you saw in that memory frame. But if questioned, and if you take the time and sit down and relax and look at that frame and analyze it, you'll see more in that frame. You might discover that there were sounds and there were textures and so on. So we're going to be learning how to capture frames, how to analyze them. And I think I mentioned to Rose that This is a technique that can be used when you're questioning someone who has observed, say, an incident, an accident, and you're trying to get them to remember what happened. You can get that person to recall that frame, but then what you do is you gently inquire into each of the 6 modes of thinking, and you ask them questions about it. Did you hear anything? Did you feel anything? Was there any movement in the room? Was there any smells that you noticed? Was there, so on like that. So this is a really great skill to have, but necessary to have as we move forward, particularly for those studying the internal map. You're going to use this ability to recall a frame and get more information out of it to understand how these frames, and they're called internal representations, how they're being used to motivate behavior and to motivate different states of mind. So going back to my example of the frame of my Christmas past, just by recalling that frame, it gave me a certain state of mind. I remembered something about it, and that memory of it was very calming, and I remembered my mother and my father and my brothers, and the overall feeling of getting a present, and that just sense of protection and relaxation. So it gave me a state of mind change. Now, it didn't give me a behavioral change. I didn't want to go out and cook a turkey or anything, but it did give me a physiological change. I did kind of calm down, and you may have noticed my speaking slowed down. So these frames are very important, and when you recall a frame, you will have a mind-mental state change, and you will have some physiological change. And sometimes these physiological change can result in actual behavioral motivations to do things. And I'm reminded of the classic movie, the Conspiracy, where the person was motivated to go and buy the book Catcher on the Rye whenever he saw a particular, I believe it was a phrase or it was a picture. There was a frame of something that if he saw it or heard it, he was motivated to go, and he had to go to the first bookstore and buy that book, Catcher on the Rye. Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about something called conscious healing. Now, this isn't about healing anything in particular, so I'm not talking about doing something and healing. I'm not talking about buying something and healing. I'm not talking about any particular activity that you may do. I'm talking about the fact that it has been studied and researched that when you are conscious of something, you will tend to begin the healing process, whatever it is. And it could be on a physical level, it could be on an emotional level, it could be on a spiritual level, it could be on any of those energetic levels. Simply by becoming conscious of something, it initiates an internal process of repair and healing. This is why I believe one of the things that happen when we are ill, when we do have a physical problem, we have pain. Pain focuses our attention on what needs to be healed. If you have an upset stomach, you get cramps and pains. And what that focuses all of your attention, all of your energy into this. So pain isn't there just to annoy you. Now, mind you, there are certain kinds of pain that are chronic and that are due to an injury. And I think those have to be treated differently. But the everyday garden variety pain that we have is driven, I believe, by your overall subconscious getting you to focus. One of the examples of using conscious healing that I first encountered was changing someone's habit. When I was in my 20s studying professional dance, we all had chiropractors. So going to a chiropractor was pretty much mandatory if you were into professional level dancing. And the chiropractor he was fantastic. And I remember one day he said to me, he said, Steve, he says, do you drink coffee? I said, yeah, I do, Bill. I drink coffee. And he said, do you put sugar in it? And I said, yeah. He said, how much sugar? I said, 2 teaspoons of sugar. He said, here's what I'd like you to do. He says, just for 1 week, until you come back next week to see me, instead of having 2 teaspoons of sugar, just have 1. That's all I want you to do. And he didn't give me any other instructions, didn't tell me to do anything. So for that whole week, I said, okay, man, I'll do that. So I went away, and my next cup of coffee, another thing professional dancers do, they drink a lot of coffee. So I remember, just as I was just about to have that cup of coffee and put my sugar in it, when I went to do the second teaspoon, I said, no, I'm going to do what Bob said. So I just put 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. And man, did I notice it. It didn't seem to taste as sweet as all. Man, I said, okay, well, I'll try to do it. So for the rest of the week, until I saw him again, I just had that 1 teaspoon. But something very unusual happened. On the second or third day of me having 1 teaspoon rather than my 2, the 1 teaspoon tasted really sweet. I was thinking, wow, that's really unusual. How could that be? I'm having less sugar and it tasted sweeter. By about the 4th day, I found the 1 teaspoon of sugar so sweet that I cut back to half a teaspoon. Well, to make a longer story shorter, by the time I went back to my chiropractor for my next week's appointment, I had cut back to no sugar. So by the time I got to see him, and he said to me, Steve, well, how did you do with that? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I found that the amount of sugar I was having was so sweet that now I drink my coffee without any sugar at all. And he looked at me and he laughed. He says, yeah, that's what happens to most people. The moment they focus on what they're actually putting in the coffee, they actually taste it, and they actually become aware of it, they realize that maybe they don't even need the sugar. So that's an example of conscious healing, changing behavior for the better. I don't even drink coffee anymore, but if I did, I would. But I don't put sugar in stuff. But that's an example of how just by focusing in on it, you automatically begin to adjust. And I went within 7 days from 2 teaspoons of sugar per coffee, and I would have multiple cups of coffee a day, to none. So we're going to be talking about this and the power of conscious healing quite a bit in both the first hour and the second hour, because the more you meditate, the more you become aware, you will automatically begin to heal and get better. That's just the way life is. And talking about the process, I do want you to meditate longer, but I don't want you to do it because you feel you have to. For those of you who are doing a little 1-minute meditation at home, I would like to see where you're doing the 1-minute meditation and you say, well, I think I'll do 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And you will begin to extend the length of your meditation automatically. Because why? Because it feels good, because you like it, not because Steve told you to, or not because you have to. In the upcoming sessions, we're going to talk about what happens when you meditate longer. And that's going to be coming up when we talk about frequencies of the brain. We're also going to be talking about if you're going to meditate longer than a minute or two, how to get your body aligned. So I'm going to talk about lining up your body. And this is pretty much traditional stuff, but you should do it to some extent. And it doesn't matter what physical condition is, you'll be able to do this. You do not have to sit cross-legged, but you do have to do certain things to protect well, not really to protect anything, but to encourage the blood circulation and energy flow. So, yep, if you feel like meditating longer, do so only because you wanted to. And I would almost prefer that you set to do 1 minute meditation, and when you checked, you had been setting for 5 or 10 minutes. You just set as long as you feel comfortable. Okay, well, that's pretty much the preview of session 3, and we'll be meeting with session 4 and doing in the first hour and the second hour. Of course, we'll be having the Patreon group who will be doing part 2 of the internal map of reality. We did part 1 last Wednesday, and next Wednesday we'll be doing part 2, drilling deeper into what is an internal map of reality and why is it so important and how can we use it. So with that, I think I'll wrap this up, and really do hope you can join us next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day.